Today on Hearts of Heroes, a dirt biker crashes in the Utah desert, leaving him seriously injured, helpless, and alone.
I had realized there was something wrong.
She sounded pretty distraught, and she just said, Brad hasn't made it home.
So at that point, the sheriff said, I want you to get the guys out there and let's get going.
It was cold, it'd been raining. We knew if he was alive, he was freezing.
We were racing against the clock to be able to save Brad.
There was 50% chance he was going to make it, 50% chance he wasn't.
These first responders have one goal: to save the lives of those in peril. First responders, whether police, fire, dispatchers, or EMTs, are used to helping those in need. They always put their own lives on the line to save others.
But in March of 2023, an off-duty police officer found himself on the receiving end of a rescue when the dirt bike that he was riding crashed in a canyon in Utah. Rescuing him would take multiple agencies and his family and friends who simply refused to give up.
Washington City, Utah is right along the Arizona state line. The landscape is a gorgeous mix of vast deserts and red rock canyons.
Very popular for dirt bikes, side-by-sides, a lot of ATV recreation out there.
Brad Coleman is an officer with the Washington City Police Department.
What I really like about it is being able to help people, returning back to the community, making a difference the best you can.
His dedication to others is unreal. He is more than willing to drop what he's doing to help anyone in need, whether it's on the job or off the job.
Like many in the area, he has a passion for riding motorcycles.
For me, it's a feeling of release.
On March 11th, Brad headed out to Warner Valley to take his bike out for a spin.
Our conversation before he left for his ride was, I'm meeting up with my friends out in Warner Valley. I'll be back later. I wanted him to go and just enjoy his day off, so we never set a time for him to be home.
Since Brad wasn't planning on taking a long ride, he didn't tell his wife exactly where he would be. So when he didn't show up at home by dark, Christy became increasingly concerned.
It started getting worrisome when the wind started kicking up, and a couple hours had gone by from the last text that I had texted him, and I never got a response.
The hours ticked by, and Brad still had not gotten in touch with her.
I had realized there was something wrong. That gut feeling, I just wanted to throw up. There had to be a reason why he wasn't home. I made a phone call to our sheriff, Nate Brooksby.
She sounded pretty distraught. She just said, Brad hasn't made it home.
Sheriff Brooksby immediately understood the gravity of the situation.
I reassured her that I would send anything and everything I could. So I called Sergeant Daryl Cashin with Search and Rescue, told him to launch the troops and start heading out to Warner Valley.
So at that point, the sheriff said, I want you to get the guys out there and let's get going.
Sergeant Cashin urgently got in touch with the Department of Public Safety, or DPS, to send out search helicopters.
I called DPS, this is kind of what's going on, can you guys fly? And they go, yeah, we'll come.
We loaded up in the aircraft, put on our night vision equipment, and headed out to search.
Within the first 30 minutes of me reaching out to the sheriff's office, they had an entire crew on their way to the area that we thought Brad was riding.
For these first responders, it was a very personal mission.
Because it is one of your officers or someone that you work closely with, yeah, the emotions are at that top level. But I needed to remain calm so I can be an asset for Brad.
If we lose it out there, we are doing them no good and we can't rescue them. So we find ways to maintain our feelings and our emotions so we can focus on our job.
Brad's family and close friends also joined the search.
It was right after midnight. His brother called me. He was out in the desert searching for him. So I got up, got a flashlight, got my jacket, and I went and met up with his brother, Brian.
By this time, they had gotten in touch with Brad's riding buddies, who said that their friend had never shown up. Now, rescuers had no idea where Brad was or where to begin to look for him.
It's just such a big, wide area and such an unknown of where he could have gone on a motorcycle. He could have been in Arizona as far as we know.
Coming up, time is running out for Brad.
It was cold, it'd been raining. We knew if he was alive, he was freezing.
But first, a few facts about hypothermia to keep you safe.
Did you know hypothermia can occur even when temperatures are not below freezing? And it doesn't have to snow for your body to reach a dangerously low temperature.
Rain, cold water, or even sweat can cause your body temperature to drop, sending you into hypothermic shock. One contributing factor to extreme hypothermia is wet clothing. So before hitting the great outdoors, be sure to avoid cotton fabric and wear synthetic materials made to keep you dry and warm.
Check weather conditions before sustained periods outside. And remember, when it comes to outdoor activities, always dress for success.
In March of 2023, Officer Brad Coleman went missing after taking his dirt bike out for a ride in the Utah desert. By that evening, a massive search was launched.
Officers from our department, search and rescue personnel, friends, family.
We focused our search effort between where Brad's truck was and where he was supposed to be with his friends.
We had Star 9, again, searching the cliffs and things from the air. And I had ground guys on motorcycles and Jeeps and UTVs and on foot looking for any signs.
It was cold, it'd been raining. We knew if he was alive, he was freezing. At that point, we're worried about coyotes and mountain lions, snakes, that kind of thing.
First responders tried to find Brad's location by pinging his mobile phone. But when they didn't get a connection, they could only assume his device was off, or he wasn't getting reception.
By 3 o'clock in the morning, with no signs of Brad, rescuers made the heart-wrenching decision to stop the search for the night.
It's never easy to call a search, any search. But you also realize there's a point that whatever resources I had left out there, I needed them to go get some sleep. They were better used during daylight.
Operating a helicopter when you're tired is extremely dangerous. Your decision-making goes down, your reaction time slows down, you can start to miss those small things, and the small things in a helicopter is what's going to get you.
The plan was to pick back up as soon as the sun came up. Family friend David Lee, who had been searching with the group, went home fearful.
I didn't sleep. I was worried about Brad more than anything.
Then he came up with an idea.
I had called Brian, his brother, on my way out there and said, hey, I'm gonna be out there at daybreak with my drone and I'm gonna, start searching for him right away.
So the next morning at daybreak, David left his home with his own revised plan and a gut feeling.
One of the things that they had told me is they couldn't ping his phone. He didn't have service where he was at. I have the same service as him. So I went out there and I lost service about a half mile, maybe a mile, before the spot I thought he was at. So I figured there was a good chance he was in this area.
David put the drone in the air and started surveying.
I was about 1,600 feet in the air with my drone, just zooming in as max as I could into every little crevice. Finally, I see a dirt bike. I lost my breath for a minute, and I was just like, whoa, I found him.
It appeared that Brad had gone off a dirt track and had fallen into a narrow gorge.
He came through Warner Valley back behind us here, actually. He must have been going up and didn't realize the jog in the trail right up around the area up here. Launched off of that, hit the wall on the other side, and then ended up down at the bottom of the ravine there. It's basically a 40-foot straight drop.
After David spotted the crashed motorcycle on his drone, he realized that he also had 0 cell service. So he quickly jumped in his truck.
I'm going as fast as I can, just flying down that road, beating my car up. So right when I got 1 bar on my cell phone, I sent the photograph over to search and rescue.
I got a phone call that one of Brad's friends thinks he saw what he thought was a motorcycle. I was given a GPS coordinate. I gave that to DPS Star 9, who was back out there. Said, go over to this coordinate.
Search helicopters were dispatched to the very spot that David found.
It was not even close to the search area.
We changed our search pattern and went directly over to that location.
And we were able to find the bike.
As we're coming closer, we can see that he's back behind the bike and that he's moving. He's waving his arm.
I heard it come over the radio that he's moving. They found him. His brother came, gave me a big hug, and cried in my arms, and it was a cool moment.
Well, I immediately called Christy and informed her that, hey, we found him. He's moving.
I paused and I just thought, he's alive. And it's all I could have asked for.
We had somebody who is still alive, and if they're still alive, we still have a chance.
But now we need to make sure we can extract him inside of a ravine 15, 20 feet below the actual surface.
He was somebody we all knew. There was a lot of pressure on all the rescuers that day to get the job done and get the job done well.
When DPS landed to pick up 2 of my SAR guys that are EMS, I turned to them and I did say, this is one of ours, go get him.
Coming up.
There was a 50% chance he was gonna make it, and 50% chance he wasn't.
We were racing against the clock to be able to save Brad.
Officer Brad Coleman had gone missing in the desert of Warner Valley, Utah. Hope of finding him was running out. That is, until a resourceful friend found him in a small ravine using a drone.
Now that first responders knew where to find him, they had to devise a plan to get him out safely. And this is where the real rescue began.
Okay, now we're going from what was a recovery to a rescue, and everything is time sensitive, and we were racing against the clock to be able to save Brad.
Pilot Scott Barnes found an area to lower the helicopter.
Fortunately, just right to the side of where that little slot was a nice flat spot for us to land. I landed, and the 2 tactical flight officers got out of the aircraft.
He was in the very back of this crevice, this crack in the rock.
You can be okay. He was shaking really bad, freezing from the night before. I was able to put some blankets around him, at least try to get him warm.
Anything warm, if they have warm blankets or anything.
He didn't have any movement in his legs. He had back pain and had pain in his abdomen.
You'll be okay, dude. We got you.
When somebody does have a back injury, it's really particular because if the back moves in any specific way, you could damage a lot more than just vertebrae.
And so we really were fighting for time to get him life-flighted out of there, get to the hospital where he can get checked and, he can get assessed.
A light flight chopper landed nearby at the top of the cliff, but for Brad to reach it, the rescue helicopter would need to hoist him from the bottom of the ravine. So rescuers wrapped him in a protective piece of equipment called an Aries bag and attached it to the helicopter's pulley.
We were able to very quickly pick him up in the Aries bag straight up and then just fly the helicopter, hover it over a little bit, and then set him right down, right on the stretcher for life flight.
The light flight helicopter rushed Brad to the hospital, but his condition was dire.
There was a 50% chance he was gonna make it, and 50% chance he wasn't.
Coming up, Brad faces the fight of his life.
It was probably about 10 o'clock at night when I had realized how bad he was.
But first, some important advice for all bikers of any type.
Whether you're an expert or a beginner, bike safety attire is essential.
Wearing a helmet, reflective bands, and long pants can greatly reduce the risk of lasting and dramatic injuries should you fall. Also, be sure to carry identification and medical ID card just in case you're involved in an accident.
The numbers don't lie. If you wear a helmet, your risk of a head injury is reduced by nearly 70%. Bottom line, always wear the proper gear when you decide to ride.
After surviving a near-fatal motorcycle wreck and spending 15 hours alone in the frigid desert overnight, Brad Coleman was teetering on the edge of life and death. He was immediately taken to the ICU.
When I first saw him in the hospital, in the ER, he had a look on his face that I had never seen. His eyes looked so tired and like he wasn't completely with us. There was a sense he was almost on his way out.
At this point, no one was sure just how bad Brad's injuries were.
They took him in and did some scans and saw that his back was broken, and they told me that they were going to be taking him in for his back surgery that evening. I believe it was probably about 10 o'clock at night when I had realized how bad he was.
A fractured back and spinal cord had paralyzed Brad's legs. But after months of healing and physical therapy, Brad began to show miraculous signs of improvement.
I started regaining feelings into my quads, and my hip flexors started working again, which has given me the ability to lift and lower my legs. They did not expect to see that. They didn't expect any movement at all.
And he knows he's gonna walk. He has from day one known that he is going to walk. It's gonna take a lot of work, but he's determined.
Brad still has no recollection of how the accident happened, but he did learn an important lesson.
I shouldn't have been riding alone. That's kind of one of the biggest things that I do, is I don't ride alone, and this is the reason why. And the moral to the story is to be prepared. I believe my life was saved because of the gear I was wearing, and I wasn't gonna give up a fight.
Brad had not seen many of his friends and colleagues since the day of the rescue. So Sheldon Yellen of our sponsor, Belfour Property Restoration, brought Brad, his family, and his rescuers together for the first time.
And everything's just so amazing. You know, I'm probably a lot different than I was then. You guys coming out and working tirelessly through the night and morning, it's the reason I'm still here. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart.
To all of you, you put yourselves out there every day, generally respond to people you don't know. How does it feel to get that call that it's one of your own?
Yeah, I had a hard time shutting it down at 3:30 in the morning to know he was out there and hadn't found him yet. Sorry. If I talk anymore, I won't be able to talk. I love you, buddy.
Love you.
Brad, can you share with us some of the progress you're making?
I have able to kick out my legs and move them around, and I can stand up using a walker and take a few steps.
We are so grateful for your service. We thank you for your commitments and for your continued passion toward helping those in need. If this isn't a story that brings it home, I don't know that we'll ever see one. Thank you all. When Brad shared with all of us the fact that he could move his legs again, gave everybody a feeling of emotion that was hard to contain.
He's a warrior. He never gave up, and he just has that mentality to fight.
I think this man is actually going to be walking, and he's actually going to be back in a patrol car.
My goal is to heal up, walk again, and get back on that force.
Off-roading, whether you're on an ATV or a dirt bike, can be a fun and exhilarating experience, but it can also be dangerous.
So always make sure to wear a helmet, never ride alone, and be sure to let someone know where you'll be riding. We'll see you next time on Hearts of Heroes.
Thanks so much for watching.